Ustedes me levantan la mano, muy bien, ¿y tú? ¿Sabes quién es ese? No? Okay. Okay, what do we do first? Raise your right hand. I always forget that. Official oath. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this Commonwealth, and be faithful and true to the Commonwealth of Kentucky so long as I continue a citizen thereof, and that I will faithfully execute to the best of my ability the office of police officer. Y'all should have stuttered, I did. According to law. I do solemnly swear that since the adoption of the present Constitution, I, being a citizen of this state, have not fought a duel with deadly weapons within this state, nor out of it. Nor have I sent or accepted a challenge to fight a duel with deadly weapons. Nor have I acted as a second in carrying a challenge, nor aided or assisted any person thus offending, so help me God. Excellent. You are now in the game. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. There you go. Ooh. Guns. So we.
Are you kidding me? No kidding. Well, I mean, dang, I didn't. When I saw that, I thought,
Okay, I'll show you, George.
Those are both my daughters.
look at that. Cool.
Yep. I recognize.
Yes, my daughter.
Okay, that's always a special deal. Item 3 on the agenda is Fisher Park renovations. Amanda Rogers, Parks Director, and Chad McCormick, LD and D. Oh, there's Amanda.
I'm ready, Mayor. Mayor and Commissioner.
You always are.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here today to go through a presentation that will walk you through some important renovations to renovate and revitalize the Owensboro softball complex, which has become a tremendous asset in our strategy for sports and recreation tourism here in our community. I went the right way on the first slide. That's great. So today we're going to go through the history of the Owensboro softball complex, the role it plays in our community. We're going to consider the challenges that we face today, and we're also going to introduce the renovation concepts. I will remind you that we hired LD&D. That is a group out of Louisville, and we're working with their principal engineer, Chad McCormick, who's here today, and we'll cover some of the items in this presentation here in just a few minutes. I also have with me today to answer questions if there are any from your group. Jared Bratcher, he's our sports marketing director with the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and the recreation facilities manager on my team who oversees the complex, and that is Chris Carey. The Owensboro softball complex was built in '86 and '87, and it truly was an original in our region. It's lasted 31 years and provided a tremendous amount of economic impact for our community each year. In '87, the then new complex hosted 4 leagues and 11 tournaments. And since that time, we've more than doubled our the normal schedule at that facility. A typical season runs April through late October. We have several leagues, and we typically, in the last 2 or 3 years, have scheduled between 28 and 30 tournaments, and we're averaging somewhere between 21 and 23 a season. And we play more than 2,000 games at that facility each year. The value to the complex is multifaceted. It provides a lot of recreational opportunities for our local citizen, the local taxpayer. And in addition to that, it really is a critical component of our sports and recreation tourism strategy. The length of the season, the relationships that we have cultivated through the years with hosting organizations and tournament directors, and our success through the years have really made this location crucial in our community sports tourism strategy. You know that sports and recreational tourism drives new dollars that were earned in other communities here to our local economy. And we have some very great and multiple sports complexes in our community, between Thompson-Berry Soccer Complex, the Wayman Morris Football Complex, the Edge Ice Center, the Owensboro Tennis Complex with Center Court. And those are all amazing facilities for their sport, and they do great things for our economy, but none of them have the impact that the softball complex does. It really is the linchpin in our strategy here, and that's due to the length of season. So we really get our biggest bang when we spend dollars at this location. This kind of gives you an idea of what our numbers look like per season. There are yearly experiences. So you see that we schedule approximately 30 tournaments. We offer 13 leagues for our local taxpayer, and we draw a conservative estimate of nearly 100,000 user experiences a year, and that is a conservative number in my mind. That's all great news for our community. Our staff and the CVB team work to maintain and grow a very solid schedule each year with 28 to 30 tournaments. However, between the tournament games and the league game cancellations, especially for our weekend events, those cancellation numbers keep growing. And you can see that percentage growth in cancellation on that slide. With every tournament cancellation, we miss new dollars that could be infused into our economy. We're going to look at the status and the current challenges we face here at the facility. Unfortunately, it's kind of similar to a 30-year-old flooring in your home. It's seen heavy use. The facility no longer performs in the manner that we can really be proud of. It no longer drains well. It has uneven transition areas and poor soil composition. These 2 slides that we're going to look at illustrate the conditions we're battling after 31 years of play. The photos show you examples of some of the problems we're facing on one or more of the fields, such as inconsistent grade and significant grade changes. When the complex was built, it was built to drain to grade, and through 31 years of play, that grade and our soil compositions have deteriorated, causing poor drainage, pooling water, and trapped water. These degrading field conditions are really influencing our facility's reputation in the market, the confidence the teams have when they book events or they register to play in our community, and the confidence the tournament directors have in our facility. This impacts our registration numbers And if the field conditions continue to decrease, it will affect our tournament schedule, not to mention the direct revenues we gain at our facility and the impact to our local businesses and our economy. In recent years, many cities have followed our lead as the original, building ball complexes themselves to kind of try to buy a piece of that market. And as this competition continues to grow, many communities in our region see the value to the local economy that sports and recreation tourism does, as we have for many years here in Owensboro. And they've built and are planning to build ball complexes. So our decreasing field conditions, alongside the growth in this market, really demands that we address and improve the conditions at our softball complex. That way we can maintain our place in the market and we can maintain the economic impact this facility has. So in considering how to address this problem and move forward, the staff sat down and we determined our priorities. And that list of priorities is shown there, first and foremost being our field conditions. We also looked at parking, the customer experience, how do we rebrand this facility, and placemaking. And the rebranding is an important part of this complex part of this project because it's the Owensboro softball complex at Jack C. Fisher Park. And if you look at our schedule, softball is a small part of what we do regularly now. It's a lot of our local play, but our tournament play that drives that tourism dollar is primarily baseball. It's no longer softball. So it would make sense that we address the rebranding of this location at this time as well. So we took those priorities and broke them down into individual components. Where are those areas that we can improve the facility to make it a better draw for tournaments, to keep us competitive in the market, and to improve the location we have? We really worked with LD&D to review the components and really analyze options, cost, life cycles, how it will affect us operationally, and how it will affect play, schedules, and our budget. We really want to maximize play, extend the season, and be conscious of the finances and the operations in that process. So now I'm going to introduce Chad McCormick with LD&D, who's going to walk us through some plans for improvements.
Thank you again. I'm Chad McCormick. I'm with Land Design and Development.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. You've got a great city and a great park. We're honored to be a part of what you're doing here. We have a number of concepts that we explored with Amanda and her staff to see how we could revitalize and take the park into the next 20 years. You see on your screen there the overall concept that does focus on the fields, but there are many other elements. First and foremost, as Amanda said, phase one, the most important asset you have in your park are the fields. They're, after all, what bring people here. This gets into a very changing environment for this industry. Synthetics have come from when the first AstroTurf was put down in Houston to what we have now are dramatically different. The synthetic materials that we have on many fields, even in the last 5-6 years, are different than what many people have experienced, and we're finding they're very durable and help open up your schedule in play periods, weather periods that you wouldn't normally be able to play. However, that is a very difficult decision because it's not something that you can put down and forget about. It does require maintenance like any other material. It will wear down. It reacts to temperature, heat. It reacts to sun, UV, in different ways, and you have to maintain it. Many communities over the last 20, 30 years have experienced difficulties because they didn't embrace those challenges that come in with synthetic fields. This was a topic that we've talked in and out from as many angles as we could with the staff to make sure that there's an understanding that if you go synthetic, it's not going to take your problems away. It does offer you some advantages, but with all materials, you do have challenges. We explored at different ends of the spectrum with renovating your fields. First, keeping it the way it was originally built, natural materials. You'd have engineered soils that are meant to drain. Worked very well when this was built in the 1980s, 87. But it needs to be reconditioned, revitalized to be able to go to that state. Would require a considerable amount of effort to bring it back to its original state. You can go full synthetic, meaning you have an artificial turf all the way from home plate all the way out to the back fence. That is an option that many communities have explored. Not many have chosen that route because of the tremendous initial capital expense. What has become more popular is the hybrid approach. And we'll have a few slides here that kind of take a deeper look at what that means. But in essence, we're taking the best of both worlds from a natural material and a synthetic, and bringing the best attributes of both to bear to benefit your playability and durability of the surface. A number of things that we looked at that were considered with those ends of the spectrum considerations were the initial cost. I mean, after all, you have to be able to build it. If it's too expensive and it's the best option, but you can't build it, it's infeasible. We looked at, from there, once you get it built, you have to be able to look at when it needs to be replaced. Synthetic materials, many vendors will say 10 years is a good replacement window. I would recommend 8 years as a planning horizon that you top in, that you're going to replace that material. There's an expense with disposing of that material. You're going to take it up and put it in dumpsters. That's an expensive enterprise. So all of those issues that you're dealing with, not just now when you put it in, but what you're going to deal with in 10, 20 years are also, or have been considered. The operation and maintenance cost, as I alluded, you still have to maintain these. You have a rubberized material that goes on the synthetic turf, or the grass blades, if you will, that has to be seeded in over years. But ultimately, what are we here for? We're here for the kids and for the users of the facility, that they can enjoy the material, enjoy the surface. We don't want it to interfere with the play of the game in a negative way. And so that makes it more desirable for tournaments. What a number of communities have gone with, like I said, is a hybrid approach. If you look very closely at these photographs, you can see that there's slight color differentiation between your infield and your outfield. The outfield is grass. It's mown. It looks very good. Everybody wants a pretty picture, right? So it's mowed and looks very nice, but it's a natural grass material like we have in our yards. In some places even better. And what we have on the infield, from the bases all the way into home plate, is an artificial synthetic material. The example you have on the left is from a high school, not far from where our office is. And well, I guess both of them are. And we're talking with the one on the right, the operator there, asked, well, what do you think about the field? And he said, well, it's paid for itself. And I'm an engineer, but we talk economy as well, and that perked my ears up. He said, what do you mean it paid for itself? How's that possible? He says, well, we had events that we hosted that we didn't plan on, we didn't schedule, because there were other events in the city that when it got rained out, they called them in a panic and said, hey, can we go to your place? We don't want to have to cancel our events. Can we go to your place? And so they got revenue that they weren't even counting on, just because they had a playable surface. And that's played through with the next echelon above high schools. This is university. It's in Lexington, and it's more pronounced. You can see the infield versus the outfield. It is a different color at this time of the year. The grass is not as bright as green as it is in the early spring. In the summer, it turns a little different shade, and so you can see the difference a little bit more. So the infield material, when it rains, it drains away, and a few hours after the rain passes, you can play on it. That's not possible with a natural material, even with the best drainage that is available. So we've got a great facility. We have our tournaments back. We're not canceling as many games. And what we have recommended in the proposals you have are for the synthetic approach. If you took that out to the full field, it would just be cost prohibitive from an initial capital expense. So the synthetic is what many communities are going forward with. Once we get away from the fields, there are a number of amenities that we describe in how to make the park attractive and a place that you want to return to. We have fun on the fields, but there's a lot of in-between time. There's a lot of waiting. There's a lot of opportunity for social gatherings. And the first thing that people see of your park, your main entrance, it's a nice entrance, but we have developed a couple of concepts, and this is one that we've tried to embrace, the rebranding of the park. And this is a concept for a signature entrance at the main entrance there with the highway to bring attention to it, make it look that much nicer. There's parking at the front. You have, from a designer's perspective, you have an ideal canvas. It's nice and flat, and you've already got a drive lane on both sides. And to expand this into basically doubling the parking at your entrances is a nice option to not have to put in a lot of infrastructure in, but get better parking. As you have tournaments and other events, parking near their entrance is a prized commodity. And we have identified an option that shows the parking as a one-way traffic that makes smooth traffic, ease some of the parking issues. And there again, we don't have to do too much infrastructure relocation. There is one utility pole that we have to move, but you can get 68 parking spaces, basically doubling it without a whole lot of extra infrastructure besides the asphalt. Then we come into the thing that most people are going to see most often. They're going to see the surfaces of your fields quite a bit, but they're going to spend a lot of time at your entrance. This is the ticketing entrance you have now, and it was very appropriate for the 80s. It doesn't quite measure up with your competition communities. While the park was a flagship in the 80s, its competition has definitely raised the bar. What we've illustrated is a concept that takes some of the challenges we have at the current entrance. In particular, there's no shade. It's a very hot entrance. So there's right now, when you have ticketing booths, to bring it out a temporary tent to provide some shade for that ticketing staff. It doesn't provide a lot of space right now for people to gather. Social media has exploded. Everybody's wanting to take that selfie, that little picture. And there's not a whole lot of room with a nice background to support that. The surfaces, like everything else, is degrading. The concrete is wearing out. There are pits and other issues that would be burdensome for somebody in a wheelchair. They can get around, it's compliant, but would be difficult. So it's functional, it works, but it's not very attractive by today's standards. So we've come up with a concept that keeps the basic elements there. The gate is in the same place, but it does have more of a baseball theme. We have a baseball at the parking lot side, and we have the diamond on the inside of the fence. Right in between there is a shade structure. That's enough that it goes over top of the gate, and depending on where the sun is coming in at that time, should be able to get some shade on some tables for the ticketing. There again, just from another perspective of that, this is some place that's big enough and attractive enough that you're going to have your visitors spend some time there. We call this a signature entrance in our industry, and this is what people remember. They're going to remember the games, the exciting, close games, but they're also going to have that visual cue that's going to be in the photos. They're going to remember and come back. This is identified in phase 2 of the plan to renovate the park. There's a picture on the left is looking from the parking lot into the field, into the entrance. The opposite photo is looking from within the park, looking out. Another view from there. We're leaving the flagpoles in basically the same place. You notice there's a large glove. That's a play structure that a number of play manufacturers offer. And this is what we think is the placemaking. That was in the original or the agenda at the very beginning. This is, I think, an element that is going to become very attractive, and people are going to know your park by what you have in this entrance. You're going to have great facilities to support it and back it up and attract it, but the kids are going to remember, oh yeah, I want to see the giant glove. I want to go to the giant glove. And with all these people, definitely you've met the capacity and surpassed the capacity of your current parking facilities. We've added some parking up front, nearly doubled it. Phase 2 also identifies working on the parking in the rear. We explored some opportunities to add parking, but rested with a solution that takes advantage of what you have now and kind of reworks the islands. Gives you more parking spaces, makes it safer. Right now, it's very difficult, or could be difficult, for people going from the fifth field in the back, the practice area, up to the ticketing entrance. So we've just kind of brought it up to the current codes and standards and provide a pleasant walkway with shade from the fifth field area back in that area up to the ticketing entrance. And the fifth field, as mentioned, taking advantage of, you've already got a great asset there. Just needs a little bit of attention to make it that much more usable and attractive and pleasing to use. So we add a few amenities, relatively inexpensive amenities, given that you already have the infrastructure there. Lastly, we have identified a playground. You've got a great open space between the fields. If you look at it on the map, it doesn't look very big, but when you walk it, it's huge. From a playground's perspective, it's a great canvas, a great area to put in an area for the travel leagues that are going to be there all day, and they want some time, some place for the little kids to be able to go and have fun as well in between games. And we have, in your packet there, we have some illustrations of what that playground can look like. And this is identified in phase 3. One thing we do have to consider because of the location of this playground, it's right in between some baseball fields, some softball fields. And we don't want our kids getting hit with baseballs or softballs. And so we have some foul ball netting that those things will be pretty tall, and they're a relatively expensive element of this part of it. They are crucial, though. I would highly recommend it, if you're going to put that playground there, that you have that foul ball netting protection, just to keep our kids safe. And then we also have, wrapping up some other amenities, the more people that you have here, they're expecting to be able to warm up, whether they're traveling in or the leagues that are the local leagues want to have a place to practice and get better. And warm-up area and batting cages are identified in phase 3. These are relatively inexpensive. If you notice inside the netting area, that is an artificial turf as well. It's a concrete pad with artificial turf on top of it, so that it's relatively maintenance-free. And then the placemaking, as I mentioned before, these are the little details. Details make everything for a park. You can have a great facility, but if you ignore the details, it's going to be like everybody else. The details for the placemaking, given social media and how our world has kind of morphed around that very graphic presentation of memories, is very important. And this is one of the illustrations we have in the concept of the baseball glove. There are some other giant bats that are great places for kids to, literally all the kids on the team to sit on the bat, take their picture there. Other elements that provide a sense of place. And that's what we've identified for phase 3. So we've talked with contractors, we've used prior projects, we've broken down the elements right now from a planning perspective in as much detail as we can without actually having construction drawings. We've tested some of those with contractors, which the economy we have right now is a high commodity. Most of the contractors are busy and prices are going up. Depending on when you bid it out, you could get a higher price than others. Most contractors will set their schedule for the year in the November to January time period, and if you put a bid in, out for the public after that, then you may get a higher price. So as this moves forward, we'll definitely need to talk with some contractors and see what the feel of the market is at the time. But this is a challenging environment right now for getting good bids because everybody's so busy and benefiting right now from the economy. Let's see. We did, because this is planning level, we put some contingencies in there that because there's always the detail that hasn't been engineered or designed at this point that we've allowed for. But with that, we do have budgets that we've established for phase 1, 2, and 3. Total, it's a little under $3 million. Phase 1, most important elements are your fields. And that's what's really key is for phase 1. Phase 2 gets into the amenities, the signature entrances at the front, the rear parking, and then phase 3 gets into the playground and the service entrance. So thank you for your time. With that, Amanda, her staff, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And I would note that each one of the budgets for each item have a 15% contingency worked into that dollar amount already, which is a positive thing. In addition to that, we looked at the phasing in approach to try to make it more manageable within the budget. We didn't want to come to you asking for something to be bonded. We wanted to try to work it within the budget. So Nate has been extremely helpful in looking at how we can make that work within our budget, and that's where the phased implementation was important in this process.
Thank you. Questions from the commission? Mr. Sanford.
Yeah, you mentioned in your, there was 238 teams that were turned away because of rain. You know what dollars that turns into, the 238? So if we do this, what kind of return will we get back?
I can give you several different breakdowns, and in all honesty, I know that we've talked about economic impact before, and I think that we would agree with the mayor at some level that the economic impact formula the state gives us may be high for our area
Right.
at $169 a night. So we didn't go into economic impact figures based upon the state tourism dollar amount for this presentation, but I'd be happy to give that to you.
Yeah, just
the
at
one
some time.
number, I can prepare that and send that over. The one number I'd point out that we used was the hotel number.
Okay.
Looking at 238 teams, that is the number of teams that were on tournament brackets that we
Right.
had to cancel a weekend event.
Right,
When you look at that number, sorry, I'm getting back to that slide.
yeah.
We took that number and we said, okay, they're going to play 2 days. So if you look at the formula at the bottom,
Right.
that's basically on 40 people per team
Right.
that are coming from out of town to stay in a hotel, times 75%. Let's assume only 75% of those 238 teams were from out of town that were staying in hotels here. The rest were local or from Beaver Dam or Evansville and weren't needing a hotel room.
Okay.
And we took that and we multiplied it by 4 in a room, multiplied it by 2, or divided it by 4 in a room, multiplied it by 2 nights. And I feel that that is a very strong number to show you that's just direct impact loss, unrealized revenue to hotels. That does not take into account dollars spent in our concessions,
Right.
field rental that we lost. It also doesn't take into account, with my daughter last weekend, we were at volleyball in Louisville, guess who forgot knee pads? So I had to go drop $35 at the one in the expo center to buy knee pads because we didn't have time to go pick them up at
You didn't pay for
Dixer
that?
Academy. No, Mom. Of course, she never brings money on the trip with Mom, so you know how this works. So that doesn't take into account
Right.
retail sales, restaurant sales,
Right.
and/or I've got to fill up the tank to go back home.
Well, I've lived that life, believe me. I've done it all over the country pretty much. So thank you for your answer.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Commissioner Condon?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of comments, I guess, from, the proposed playground. It looks as if, as they said, you have to have nets over because you're in foul ball territory, is what you're in. But I assume that most everybody else, for example, the people who live in the Cravens area would not be able to use it because it would be locked off and closed, correct?
That's correct.
And did we not have a playground that was in Jack Fisher at one time?
We did. When the park was built originally, there was a playground that was directly to the left field, outside of the gates, in left field of the red field. As the industry has grown, bats are hotter, balls are hotter, we got to where we were getting balls hit into the playground area and it was removed. At that time, we did have planned to replace it, but through the years and the budget constraints, it has not been replaced.
And the reason I asked the question, of course, is for other kids in the area to just be able to try to use it is, in time, and we had this big consternation over Craven's Pool even, of what happens with it, because in time it is probably going to collapse. It's just going to be that way. Is that if there is something else then that those kids can actually be able to get to, because in this scenario they can't really get to, or another proposed location for something like that to be able to help them. And the other area that really is, I guess, to ask the question, where would the proposed $3 million phased in actually come from? We don't have a direct revenue source that comes from all the economic impact everybody likes to talk about.
Correct.
Yeah, we just don't, not like E-Town does, that has a actual direct revenue source that can go toward these type of projects. So we have to devise some plan. So what is that necessary plan? Maybe the city manager, as you pointed out, already has that covered.
Yeah, I'll defer that question to Nate.
Thank you, Commissioner. That's a good question. And we are working on the budget now. Of course, that'll be presented next month. So you'll see some of this in some form or fashion presented in the budget. Primarily, the vehicle will be the Year Community Vision Fund, the YCV fund. Of course, it was created for capital projects and capital improvements. So I think this fits in with the original intent and purpose of that fund.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome, Commissioner Smith-Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. Amanda, what surface are most of the other places like Elizabethtown? What are they? Do they have half and half, or are they the whole thing? Or?
Most are all natural at this point, and so I think that's a positive thing. We're seeing at the high school level and the collegiate level, you're seeing the hybrid approach in our region growing significantly. So we would be the first in our area to have this hybrid approach, and it's always nice in Owensboro to be able to be the first at something and set a trend. We do strongly believe that because of that, it's going to minimize our cancellations. It'll extend the length of time that we can play ball in Owensboro to early March and through potentially mid-November. And trust me, as many of you will know from being in the travel sports industry, there are teams that play sports year-round and travel all over early in the year and late in the year. And through discussions with Jared and all of our tournament directors, they're very excited about this as an option because, of course, it grows their business, improves their business, and will solidify a schedule, decreasing those potentials for cancellation.
Okay. On one of the slides, I noticed there was a Louisville Slugger logo on some netting. Is it possible that we could maybe get some kind of sponsorship from them to do the netting or something?
Yes, that's very possible. Chris Carey, who oversees our facility now, he's worked with Kentucky Legends, and we have a small agreement currently with Kentucky Legends that supports us through a certain amount of product, $3,500 worth of product a year at no cost to us. And they also give us cash via check each year to help support some of the operations at the field. But as we look at moving this project forward, really digging into rebranding that location as an option is something that we need to seriously consider and come up with a very strong plan and approach for, and we'll look for some guidance and some direction from you because we know that it's not just this Owensboro softball complex that is out there with our corporate citizens asking for money, but it's also the Convention Center, the River Park Center, and many of those locations that we fund and source. So that is definitely something that we will be working on.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question on the front parking. Looks like we can add 68 parking
Yes.
spots, almost triple, for $116,000. But when we go to the rear parking, in 52 spots, $215,000. Mr. McCormick, what's the difference?
Yeah, well, that alludes to, I was talking about how nice the front parking lot is because we don't have much that we have to modify or work with. With the existing in the back, to add those spots, you have to demolish and remove quite a bit of material because those islands are in place, and so there's a lot of work that you have to do that you don't have to do up front to add those spots. You definitely get the bigger bang for the buck at the front parking lot. To add more parking spots in the back, you have to be a little more creative, and it gets more expensive.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, here we go. You know, Paterno says you never stay the same. You either get better or you get worse. So, original design was in 87?
86, yes, sir.
Was it the original design for church league softball and kind of stuff like that, or was it really for team play like this?
There were 11 tournaments that year. Many were local fundraisers on the schedule that year. I pulled the schedule from 86 and 87. Surprised we had those records. But I pulled those records and looked, most were local tournaments, but there were 4 travel tournaments that year.
Okay, and previous to this, to 2016, what'd you spend on your park the year before that? Can you remember? I bet Danae or no.
When you
I'm just
say-
curious what's been done, say, not for the last 30 years, but last 15 years. I've been involved kind of in sports for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's just curious to me as to all of a sudden, now we need $6 million, or, well, I'd do the whole field hybrid if it was me, but why are we at $3 million now, and what's been done to upgrade the playing surface? Because my granddaughter played the state tournament and all that stuff, and I've kind of watched it, as you have, kind of get a little bit worse all the time. I mean, did you have tarps to protect the fields?
It's several different components that have taken us and gotten us this point through the years. A lot of it's excessive play. A lot of it's trying to get those tournaments in. So we've really seriously affected our soil composition through the years by adding the diamond dry to get a tournament in, especially our world tournaments, our state tournaments. A lot of it's overuse, and I hate to be negative,
Oh,
but
go right ahead.
but you know, our budget when this complex was built in '86, '87, they understood the amount of work that it took, and they put 2 full-time staff at that facility and 5 maintenance staff. I operate the facility now with 1.4 full-time people because none of my full-time people do just one facility. They have multiple locations they manage, and we also only have 2 part-time laborers at that location. So through the years and through the burden on the city budget and the multiple wants and needs, it just seems like the budget's gotten tighter, and it's been hard to apply sometimes the labor time and the money we need to keep things the way they were.
Excellent politically correct answer. When you do these hybrid fields, will you bring the outfield in closer than it is now? And will there be opportunities to have a legitimate fence for the people playing so they don't have to fall on that plastic thing and fall down? So you can really have a tournament. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes,
You know,
sir.
Last year in the state tournament, the outfielders, the high school outfielders were 15 feet off the dirt. So you got this skid coming to them, then hits grass, and it changes. So will that, I'm not being negative either.
No, sir, I understand
These are just things
completely.
I've seen out there for
Yes.
all these years. You know, the transition from the infield to the outfield, will that change as far as bringing, because you're still going to play adults there
Right.
as well. So how do you accommodate that?
I think to accommodate that, and the unfortunate part of that is the temp fence. Now, we have changed the temp fence that we had 2 years ago. I
Probably
guess it was
some,
2 years ago, we bought a new
probably Jared dumped it off over
a new temporary, we bought a new temporary fence system that's much easier to put in and does break away for the young ladies so that they're not falling over it, that it falls with them. But if we want to continue adult league play, our fence in the outfield will still have to remain permanent 300 feet. Now, we will look at those tournaments that we primarily book. And what happened through the years and working in partnership with the Davis County Parks Department and Panther Creek, there was a lot of indecision about who was taking the younger kids, who were taking the older divisions, and a lot of that went back and forth for years. That's why we kept extending our infield to accommodate every age division. And what we're doing now, and working in tandem with them, is we typically tend to take the younger group, which of course by all means drives higher revenues at our concessions and our
Grandma
facilities.
comes, doesn't she?
We typically want to have the younger age groups at our facilities, and the older age divisions oftentimes go to Panther. So we will be looking at what is that perfect length to accommodate and keep our schedule open so that we can keep it booked as often as possible, but also service everyone at a stronger level.
Okay, so the transition from, you know, most of the high schools around there have grass infield, you know, with softball. So when the tournament comes out there, all of a sudden you've got skin, so the ball hits and scoots. You know, what will the transition be from turf to grass as far as the speed of the ball off the bat, you know, track and the whole bit? Because when you're not allowed to practice out there on a field you're going to play the state tournament on for KHSA AA rules, it seems again we're at a disadvantage as these kids play on grass infield, and all of a sudden they jump to synthetic turf, but the speed of the ball changes dramatically. So is there some kind of interesting phenomena that can happen with the KHS? I mean, what I'm trying to do is open it up,
Right.
because we have great softball, high school, but they show up there, and you know they're third baseman. They're usually playing one hop, two hop, and then one hop and skid right through there. It's a big disadvantage. So I just was wondering the transition.
Yeah, there's some really great things with this transition. What we're seeing now with the natural turf, the natural field conditions, is that between games for these larger tournaments, our states, our worlds, our KHSA state tournament, oftentimes we've got to have the laborers out on the field, quick drag, wetting sometimes, rechalking lines. When you go to synthetic infield, which is going to be synthetic grass infield as well as synthetic dirt,
So you just have base pass.
you don't have that maintenance in between games. So now we've got that 15-minute window that we can break in for these larger tournaments and give them that opportunity to have some warm-up on the fields, a quick bat, quick infield, and that'll be good. Since the competition is at a high school level, and some of these travel tournaments, especially down in Florida, I know a lot of the larger complexes they're going to now are going to this hybrid. This is going to be something they're gaining comfort with over the next several years.
And I would put the batting cages in the first phase. it's a horrible thing to be out on another field and taking batting practice, and you have to use a wiffle ball and you have to use a wiffle bat, rather than to have an
Yes.
opportunity to get in a cage and actually swing. I would, if there was a way to get that sooner, I think that would add to the program. Your netting over the practice, can it be funneled so the balls will go to one spot so that you don't have to chase them all through the whole park area? They funnel that down and it just drops into a sack, and then one kid goes there and picks them all up. I don't know that that's a
Great engineer technique.
that's a
Are you
possibility.
talking about at the practice?
Where the kids are gonna keep getting hit by the ball, then the playground area, you're talking about netting that, is that correct?
Yes, that would do over the top and sides, and we've looked at several scenarios. The least expensive one is where one side is higher so that it rolls back into the
Okay,
field.
because that's always, they're chasing it from all over different places. How come that ball glove's pointing down? When do you ever catch a ball with the glove pointing down? Should be up, shouldn't it? Is that?
There's a couple options.
Is there? I mean, I'm thinking,
It's
who's
a
gonna-
climbing recreation, so for the kids who don't know what baseball is yet, but they have something to climb on,
Oh, it's
they
just a
like that.
climber? Okay. And so you said you built in a 15% something or other because these dollars are today's dollars, not dollars down the road, correct?
Correct.
So there, you got a 15% boost in that. All right. You have any money left over from last year's budget?
Do I?
Yeah, you. Mr. McCormick, do you have any money left over from that?
We did have $550,000 in your community vision budgeted to go towards this project. So I know as we're looking at those numbers, that dollar amount will be taken into account and added to that budget.
No, I'm not, just initial things that Nate brought this to me last week, so, I mean, if we were to, let's just say, in a great, perfect world, we just bonded what we really wanted to do. You tell me that you have enough revenue that you would get from the play of the park to pay one percentage of the bond note? Like, could you pay, if it's $100, your revenue that you're gonna generate, could that pay $50 on $100? Can you extrapolate that out far enough? I imagine, Nate, look at him, get the toy out. I mean, because it's a sidebar.
Yeah, I think our deficit last year, I'm looking at Chris for this because he's in the numbers
Your
every day
deficit.
at the complex. Our deficit last year was about $200,000. Our operational expenses were,
Revenue's about 170, so.
what was our operational expenses?
400,000.
We were a little over 400 for our operational expenses. So if you look at a deficit, then we could say, yes, we could bring in 50% of that revenue. If that answers the question you're looking
That
at.
doesn't make sense if you're operating at 400 and you got only 170 in revenue. That's not 200. So you,
Well, it's a little short of 200, yes, but if we've got 400 in expenses and we're generating approximately 200, then we're short 200 every year. And that's a give or take, rise and fall based upon how many tournaments get canceled.
but that's just for your budget. That's not to pay on the bond. is what
No,
saying.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I
maybe
misunderstood your
I'm not
question.
very good at money, so my wife
No, I
won't even let me
misunderstood your question,
write the
Mayor. I
checks, but
apologize.
I'm trying to figure out if we bonded it, and Nate, what, $3 million, and we.
Yeah, if we bonded, our payments would be probably in the neighborhood of $180,000 to $190,000 a year. It's generally $60,000 to $65,000 per million.
So if you bonded the $3 million, could you come up with
Say 180.
$180,000 to pay your part of it, and the city paid the other part?
An additional 180? Well, I sure as heck would try, but not
No,
having,
I'm just
not
theoretically,
having
I'm
that.
trying to figure out a way.
Yeah, I think what we're looking at our schedule, if you start taking into account maybe adding 8 weekends, and you start taking into account 8 weekends worth of revenue, 8 weekends worth of field rental, could we make 180,000? Probably not 180,000 on 8 weekends. No, sir.
Because if you drag this out into how many years?
3.
3 years. So exponentially, this thing, you're going to be back to $3 million or about that again. actual money instead of 800,000 for the 2 phases. So I was just trying to see, get an idea what kind of revenue you could. I hate borrowing money, so but this is a pretty big. We've spent all this money for tourism down here, and we need to find other ways to try and generate some kind of revenue, as it's a piece of the economic development puzzle we have here. So that's what I was trying to do, is just get to the idea that if you could do 100,000, could we take some of Wayne's money, you know, and so that he, no, we wouldn't take Wayne's money.
That was quick.
Wayne would tell you I take his money already, probably, if given the opportunity.
But, you know, kind of thinking those parameters just a little bit to try and I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, I'd be happy to run some numbers. I understand what you're saying.
Nate goes, I got it. So, you know, and he does. But you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, we'd have to do some calculations, obviously, but I
Yeah.
understand because, you know, obviously the expenses would probably not, even if you add tournaments, your expenses are probably not going to go up much. If anything, your maintenance expenses may go down
Right.
because of the artificial. So that would kind of close that deficit. So if we had a few tournaments, right, we could estimate. Now, obviously, it's not going to pay for itself necessarily,
Right.
but we could do some initial analysis on what that delta would be.
Because, you know, I think there should be an opportunity to hit the hotels for a little stipend, or you could hit CVB for a little stipend. I mean, I'd like to see this done. I'm kind of like, you know, when you do earmarks, federal government, you know, those members of Congress say, we give money all the time, but we never see a project get done. This is a project that's very worthwhile. I'd like to crunch as many numbers as we could to try and give you as much help as we could.
I appreciate
And
that, Mayor. Thank you very much.
I'm not speaking for the whole group, but I think most of us would agree that, you know, since you hadn't spent $85 on a place since 1987, you know, it's time now to spend some money, because over the years, you could just watch the infield get smaller and the lift and the outfield get higher, you know, and you
Yeah.
could, we used to do it at Wesleyan. We'd take a fire hose around the lip and blow all that dirt that's compacted itself on that thing and fill back in those spaces, because we've had World Series and everything else out there. I certainly would love to put the pencil to it as much as, sorry to drag it out, but, you know, sports are kind of, they're real. The rest of this stuff is kind of, I don't know. Okay, anything else from anybody? I'm sorry to obviate there. City project list, city project manager. Thank you, Mr. McCormick.
Thank you.
Yes, Mayor, you have a copy of the project list. Staff is here to answer any questions you have.
I actually have one right off the bat. At some point in time, we're probably going to have to stop calling it the Blue Bridge and call it what it's actually named, the Glover Carey Bridge. We say the Blue Bridge all the time, but the family members are starting to, they see that somebody said something about lighting it. So you going to light the Blue Bridge, or you going to light the Glover Carey Bridge? So let's keep that in our mindset, because I think that's important. You know, we don't have many landmarks here, but and I'm not complaining to you. I'm just saying, as an overall thought, I think we need to give credit where credit is due, and that's been that way since '29. Is that right? Angela, you were here. Has it been there since?
Oh, I'm getting away from this one.
Love you too, Mayor.
So let's kind of, you know, we don't want to throw everybody a curve, but I think there certainly needs to be a little bit of move towards that. I have, how long does it take to get all the punch items on the Bluegrass Museum done, Leland Hancock? I know that wasn't your job previously, but.
Been diligently working on those, Mayor. There's quite a few issues. It's a decent
Quite a
size
few?
deal, and we're wrapping those
Close to the
up.
mic so the people at home can.
We're wrapping those up.
Okay.
You know, the
So you
change
say
of
by the next
contract.
work session, that ought to be wrapped up? Okay, great.
Hope so.
Parking garage 2, do we have the gate issue fixed to where you can get in and out of it without going out and pushing it up yourself?
We've had an ongoing issue with the gate. We actually have a meeting scheduled right after this to deal with it for the next event, and we are
We
trying to work
paid
this
the
solution.
gate people that built the gates?
Yes, we have.
Okey-dokey. One other thing. No. Commissioner Connor made reference to generating revenue from local taxing options or restaurant tax. I've been in contact with the governor's office, and he's not really, has not really taken a stand on it per se, but he understands it's an issue, and probably going to, if they have a special session called to deal strictly with restructuring our tax situation in the state of Kentucky, that it's my understanding that there's several people in the Senate don't want it to be a freestanding tax, so it would be looked at in the auspice of overall tax reform. I know Nate spoke to that probably at the sister cities, the home rule cities. So I don't think we can count on that anytime soon. So we got to kind of figure out what else we can do in the meantime. But it is on the agenda in Frankfort. This is an election year for the governor. Most governors don't like to give extra taxes to the people, so I would assume that probably 21 will be the first time we're going to have a real chance to address this again. Because I made it known that the twos would probably sue the state government on standing of inequitable and unjustified fairness. That was the word, because other folks are getting to do it and we're not getting to do it. So, but I just wanted to get it was mentioned. So, okay. Anything else? Commissioner Smith Wright, another precinct heard from.
The Glover Perry Bridge lighting. Is there any?
There you go.
Is there any reason why we have to do it the night of the lighting of the Christmas tree?
I requested that.
Oh, did you? Okay. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter if you requested it. I'm still wanting to know.
I think it would be really cool. And
Well,
it's going to take that long. Hope we get it done by then.
But I'm just thinking.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I can think too.
I know you can.
I'm just thinking that, you know, there are so many people who are waiting on that. And at Christmas time, I think that ought to be its own thing. I think that at Christmas time, it's cold outside. We won't get as many people down there. The weather might be raining like it was before. You know, but if
And they might plug it in without even me being there.
Well, no, we don't want to do that. But I'm just saying that.
They did that.
It's okay. Okay, let's do it.
I just think that we would get more citizens involved and would come down if it's nicer outside, and then I also think that lighting of the Glover Carey Bridge should be on its own. That's just me.
Well, why don't we make that a social media thingamajig and get some input from the public?
If I could.
Oh, it's your turn. Leland Hancock, Assistant City Manager.
Here comes reality.
Glover Carey Bridge lighting is one of those issues, and Tim Ross can back me up. We would love to be finished before then and do a 4th of July event, but we'll be racing to be complete.
Oh, I didn't say
by
4th of
that.
July.
No, meaning
He's
we'd
talking
back it
about
up to any event, basically. But that would be the first point that we hope to be complete that we could use for an event to relight the bridge. So it would be pushed into a date after that.
Real cold weather in January.
Year's date.
It's going to be, they'll be lucky to get the work done by that time, I guess.
You know, that's an interesting comment, though, because I believe
What's
the
that?
old lights were turned on New Year's Eve of '93 or '94.
New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
The first time.
I'll take those extra 20 days.
It'll be schedule driven. I mean, obviously, so the idea was just to compile it in collaboration with another event to try to build a crowd, or when there would be additional crowd there.
Initially, I'd like to have done it the last Friday after 5. Backup was everybody was going to go to the foot of the Glover Carey Bridge with their cell phone, turn their flashlight on. We were going to light the bridge that way. But we found out sooner or later that the timing wasn't going to work right. But seriously, I thought that was. Anybody else got anything before this thing gets out of hand? Tim Ross, you got anything on the Wendell Foster half marathon?
Good crowd.
Sir?
Registration is going very
300
very
and
well.
something, isn't it?
800, I believe.
Whoa.
Isn't it?
Can we sell bands for like $10 a piece to help do the park? I mean, you know, is there any way we can? 800. Yeah, I got my sister-in-law and brother coming in from Atlanta to run in it. 23 miles. Can I ride my bike in it?
Your motorcycle or?
I think bikes and things are prohibited. Is that right? Bikes prohibited?
Well, we'll just cancel that sucker then. Huh? That fast.
Actually, both of us
Discriminating
will.
against the disabled. I got a case.
Get on it.
Sir,
I believe they do allow wheelchairs for certified handicapped, those with needs.
certified handicaps,
Whatever the language is, has to be.
person with a disability that needs a wheelchair, I think that would be.
Motorized wheelchairs?
Nope, no more.
Go get Walmart.
Self-propelled.
All right. I'll just lead it then. See, there you go. Anything else come before this session that we've gotten so much done? Angela, I was just teasing, you know that.
Oh, shit, look at her. I'm telling you, Tom. Mayor, she is. Ooh.
I'll make a motion to adjourn under acclamation.
All right.